So, um, for my class that I'm taking this month, we have to do this final project and presentation. So this is kind of like me practicing for it. So it's gonna might be a little rough. Project is on science and exactitude in the works of Calvino. So Italo Calvino is one of the foremost Italian authors of the 20th century. He's notable for his unique mesh of fact and fiction, as well as how he crafts tales that talk about the beginnings of the universe and time himself. He uses a basis of exactitude in his work, making sure that his language is precise and that he uses correct expressions, good word choice. This can be seen in Cosmic Comics, which is a book of like kind of collected short stories that all have the similar narrator. His name is Kifwik, and each story starts with a scientific premise that then kind of leaps off into that. So Calvino uses mediation, metamorphosis, vision, unity, multiplicity, space and time, limitlessness, and the infinite, negation, and erasure uh, in order to show how science shows how mankind relates to the universe around him. So Calvino uses science as a starting point, kind of like a jumping off point rather than as a consistent framework. In so doing, he makes kind of like a modern creation myth, like for instance with the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians. Of course, they believed in their gods. They did not think that they were fake. They were a viable explanation for how the world worked and how the world was. Just as for us, chemistry and biology and physics, they are very real to us and they explain to us how the world works. Therefore, modern creation myth. So science gives us both a past and a future, as we've seen in evolution and also its powers of prediction. And so Calvino uses that to craft his narratives. So there's two different types of stories in Cosmic Comics. There are ones of theories of origin, which are a lot more in motion, a lot more cataclysmic. An example of that is At Daybreak, which talks about Gerard P. Cooper's theory that before the solar system was created, it was all this kind of fluid, shapeless nebula. So it's all about going from that fluid nebula into this very solid, like planet and thing, with lots of light coming in and all that. That transition. And then the other type is more static and focuses on the psychological aspects. This can be seen in the form of space, in which Kifwik is kind of falling through the void along this certain path. There's two others falling with him, but their paths never meet. It's kind of about how he lusts over the female one, and he's very jealous over the male one, even though it's very much all in his head. He's never met either one of them, or at least so far as he remembers. So it's very interesting to see that psychology of it in him and in ourselves, as well as he ends up contemplating lines and whether they're on parallel dimensions and the never-endingness of it all. So yeah, Calvino, he explores human nature along with scientific concepts. He describes the world as we describe ourselves, which is very important, I think, in how we relate to the universe. Yeah, as I said before, Calvino uses exactitude as a basis for his stories. In his opinion, language is often used carelessly, making it very generic and diluting the meaning often of what we are trying to say. He thinks it's very important to be precise in your meaning. For instance, exactitude is very much required in science. With a chemical reaction, you can't not be precise about a chemical formula. Like if you leave something out, or if you put too much in, it's obviously going to make something completely different. Just as with a scientific theory or hypothesis, like if it's not specific enough, it can be completely reinterpreted by somebody else. So Calvino takes that scientific exactitude and meshes it with literature. It would make both a prose that is poetic and beautiful, as well as being very carrying a lot of meaning and being very decipherable. So a big part for Calvino is mediating between fact and fiction, between science and literature, and he often uses metamorphosis as this sort of mediation, as can be seen in The Aquatic Uncle and Without Colors. In The Aquatic Uncle, it's about evolution and going from these creatures of the sea to these creatures of the land, whereas Without Colors, it's more about going from this very gray world, this gray earth, into an earth full of colors. So this metamorphosis, this change. Kifwik himself is constantly changing in form. He's very fluid. He's able to mediate between mankind and the universe because he depicts human emotions in the context of the beginnings of the world, where of course no human actually existed. But it's very interesting to see somebody like us in a time and a place where we never imagined ourselves to be. There's metamorphosis throughout science that can be seen. There is, chemical reaction and evolution, changing, adapting. It's also important that Calvino mediates between our own limited knowledge of space and the world around us and the actual infinity of space, because our knowledge is very limited. Like, we are not able to comprehend what the eternal really is, whereas space is very much limitless. Like, we don't know how far it goes. So it's very important that Calvino helps us to mediate between those two kind of opposites, so we're not struggling the entire time with them. So a lot of this is seen in how Calvino uses various ways in order to let us have vision into what he's trying to say. For instance, he uses comedy for detachment. Like, without the humor of the piece, it'd be very easy to get caught up in the nihilism and our possible insignificance in the universe. But he uses comedy for this detachment so we can have this vision of unity. We can find oneness in the otherness, or in other words, the unity in the multiplicity. Yeah, for instance, Cosmic Comics, they seems barely connected, save for who the narrator is. But it's got this unity in its themes and its type of characters and how it all works as a building block for the universe. So it's important to go beyond that observation and go into intimacy and actually feel it and relate it, as Calvino helps to immerse us by putting Cosmic Comics in first-person narration, but maintaining that vital detachment by making it an older Kifwig looking back at his younger self. So Calvino maintains a very good balance between being too close and too far. So yeah, Calvino tackles a lot the issues of unity and multiplicity. Overall, he thinks that writing should be a quest for the one, as in unity between the reader and the writer, and language is the tool that bridges that gap. Another thing that can be seen as a one is God as one. At least in Calvino's case, a God above the theistic God, as in not a being, but being in itself, existence in itself, and Calvino really explores that in Cosmic Comics. Literature itself looks at multiplicity all the time, both in relationships and different disciplines and branches of knowledge. Calvino himself incorporates both literature, science, psychology, and philosophy. This contrast of unity and multiplicity can be seen in The Spiral, in which Kifwig spends most of his time as a mollusk. And he kind of ends up thinking about how the unity of his form with his fellow mollusks, like, they all have the same general shape and form, but there's this multiplicity of personalities, this multiplicity of differences that make them all a little bit unique. So Kifwig himself, he's very relatable as a character in his shortcomings and his longings, which leads to this unity between the reader and writer, which allows Calvino to get his point across. Another big thing that Calvino tackles is space and time. I mean, his entire tales are built around those concepts. There are infinite dimensions of space and time, as Calvino explores in his multiple different creation theories that he looks at. So the one uniting single factor is Kifwig and the humanity that he brings in every context. So it's very interesting to see how that humanity is always tempered with the universe. On to the limitless and infinite, and also our own human limitations. So there is constantly the mutability of matter. Kifwig himself is very mutable. He's an infinite form. However, he's a very limited personality. He constantly has these same lusts and these same rivalries coming up in every story. But sometimes he's able to see beyond himself, see beyond those shortcomings, and therefore we also must see beyond ourselves in order to relate to the universe. 3 different ways of relating to the universe can be seen in Distance of the Moon, where the deaf cousin represents the very passionate but selfless love, which is very rare. And Kifwig represents a love that kind of mythologizes and makes it, idealizes, very much like a poet would. Whereas Mrs. Vidvid and the others are the most common type, where they're so wrapped in their own intrigues and lusts that they don't even notice the cosmos around them. So you're only limited by your own vision, and it's up to you to go beyond that and to see beyond that. God himself is seen as infinite and omnipotent, and we are constantly trying to kind of reach for that infinity because it's something that's only gifted to the gods, only gifted to the deities. We can see limitlessness in the light years, where it's talking about light years is where Kifwig made a long ago mistake, and then Later, light years later, he realizes from a sign from a different galaxy that they saw his mistake. And as more and more galaxies start showing signs that they saw what the wrong he did, he starts to realize that there is an infinite amount of galaxies that could have seen what he did, and there's a limitless amount of interpretations of him that they might be having. This can also be seen in the spiral, where it's seeing both a limitation and limitlessness of form, to where the form you are currently in is very limiting, but the limitlessness comes in from what you could have possibly been and what you could possibly later become. So yeah, the universe offers a glimpse of this infinite that we're always longing for. Another thing is negation and erasure in Calvino's works. This natural progression of human history leads to a loss of ideas, as can be seen, as well as a loss of life through evolution. Um, this can be seen in dinosaurs, where Kifuk is the last dinosaur on Earth, and there's this new species who have never even seen dinosaurs or know what they are. So therefore, these dinosaurs are mythologized by this new species to where they're kind of warped into something that's entirely different from what they were. So negation is not always complete erasure, but sometimes it's just the warping of an idea until it's unrecognizable from its original. This can also be seen in A Sign in Space, where Kifik makes the first sign in space. And later on, more and more people start making signs in space. And it's kind of this cycle of him trying to be better, be ahead of them. And he kind of realizes that he's in this never-ending cycle of negation, of realizing that his old signs, they are negated. They are old and antiquated and out. But it's the same with everyone else's, and just kind of always trying to better themselves. And this can be seen in human progression. As we get more technology and different pop culture, we tend to leave the other things behind, even though it's this constant cycle of trying to be better, which isn't necessarily wrong, it's just important to recognize. It's kind of negation that we are in. Man and universe are very much tied together from their very creation. There's this limitlessness that the universe offers, and this clue to our creation that the universe offers that we were very much attracted to. Calvino focuses on how the universe was created to show how we ourselves were created and how we are as people. And yeah, mankind is constantly trying to emulate the universe without even being aware of it, because we are constantly reaching for immortality, for eternity, for that infinity. We are constantly trying to be our own creators. We're trying to be our own gods of our own little worlds. Trying to be, in essence, what the universe does, constantly, every day. So it's very interesting to see how Calvino uses science to show how man and space are both intimate and remote, how our very matter originated in the formation of the solar system, and how we are connected from there, and how our destinies are forever intertwined, whether mankind as a whole ever becomes completely aware of it or not. Yeah, so that's kind of a rough thing. See how it actually goes on the actual day. I'll probably post it after that. I don't know when I'll post this, but yeah. Cool. Yeah, if you haven't read Italo Calvino, I really encourage you to do so. It's really good. Cosmic Comics is quite good. I've heard The Invisible Cities are very good. I have not read it yet. I'm sorry, I have not. I also read the, which other one was it? Clove and Viscount? That was pretty good. So yeah, read some Calvino. Yeah, okay, cool. Anyway, bye.